The Vorten house office had been completely renovated in the last 2 years. Where before there had been signs of decline-faded wallpaper, worn furniture, patched carpets, now there was restored opulence. Not out of vanity, but strategic necessity. Nobles respected power, and power was demonstrated through visible wealth. Tenil sat behind the mahogany desk that had been his father's, the same one where, years ago, they had discussed Kasimir's offer that led to Caius's death. But now the desk was covered not with debts and worries, but with lucrative contracts and partnership proposals. House Vorten was being reborn, officially through intelligent trade and careful alliances, unofficially through money stolen from Fenrir operations, extortion of corrupt nobles, and absorption of businesses from those foolish enough to compete with the hounds. Before him, 3 middle-aged merchants saw respectable. All nervous awaited his response to the proposal they had brought. "Gentlemen," Tenil said, voice carrying natural authority he had cultivated in the last 2 years. Not the empty arrogance of before, but real command. "Your proposal is interesting. Trade route through the northern mountains, avoiding heavy taxes on main roads. Estimated profit 30% above usual." He paused, fingers drumming on the desk. "But also extremely risky. Bandits, unpredictable weather, and, more importantly," he fixed each of them with penetrating gaze, "technically illegal." The oldest of the 3 merchant, Garrick, gray hair and honest face of a man who'd worked his whole life, cleared his throat. "Lord Vorten, with all due respect, half the trade routes in the capital operate in gray areas of legality. Current taxes are suffocating. They're killing small businesses. We're just seeking to survive." "I understand," Tenil replied, and he genuinely did understand. Before Fenrir, before truly knowing the underworld, he would never have comprehended. But now, he saw how the system was rigged, how those at the top stepped on those below. "And I sympathize with your situation. But involving House Vorten in technically illegal activity, that puts me in a vulnerable position. We would pay well for the protection of your name." Another merchant, younger and more anxious, intervened. 20% of profits to House Vorten, and more importantly, absolute discretion. No one would know of your lordship's involvement. Tenil studied them, mind calculating quickly. The offer was financially tempting, and the route they proposed could be useful for Fenrir to it pass through areas they did yet control, offering opportunity to expand influence. But there was risk, if discovered, a stain on the reputation he'd worked so hard to rebuild. 30%, he said, finally. "And not just of profits. You give me control of 15% of all your operations. That makes me a partner, not just a silent investor."
"And as a partner, I have interest in ensuring everything is conducted properly." The 3 merchants exchanged glances. It was a high price, but it was also real protection. The Vorten name carried weight now. Accepted. Garrick extended his hand. "Partnership then." Tenil shook it, feeling the transaction seal. Another deal, another piece of the power puzzle he was building. They discussed details for another 20 minutes, specific routes, schedules, security measures. Tenil asked sharp questions, demonstrating knowledge that surprised the merchants. He had learned much in the last 2 years about legitimate and illegitimate trade, about how money really flowed. When they finally stood to leave, Garrick paused at the door. "Lord Vorten, if I may say, there are rumors about your change in the last 2 years. Some say your lordship has become different, sharper, more dangerous in negotiations." He hesitated. "Is it true?" Tenil smiled, and it was a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My father was murdered, Merchant Garrick. My brother too. House Vorten was on the brink of collapse. He walked to the window, looking at the city below. Tragedy teaches lessons that prosperity never could. I learned that kindness is mistaken for weakness, that honor doesn't protect those we love, and that sometimes, to survive, we need to become something different. He turned, and there was something in his eyes that made Garrick instinctively step back. So yes, I've changed. And I suggest anyone who thinks to underestimate me, remember that. Silence. Then Garrick bowed his head respectfully. Message received, Your Lordship, and appreciated. When the merchants left, Tenil returned to the desk, sudden exhaustion hitting him. Performing the competent noble lord was as tiring as commanding operations as the wolf, perhaps more because it required constant control. The mask could never slip. Not here. Not where his mother could see. Not where society could suspect. He was two men living in one body, and each day the line between them grew more blurred. Tenil was reviewing contracts when a light knock on the door interrupted him. Before he could respond, the door opened and Asher entered, not in his operational clothes as haughty, but dressed as the personal secretary he officially was. Simple but well-cut suit, hair tied in a bun, glasses that partially hid his heterochromatic eyes. To any casual observer, he was just a competent assistant. But the strange smile on Asher's lips suggested he brought something interesting. Lord Vorten, he said formally, closing the door behind him. When he was certain they were alone, he dropped the formality. You received correspondence. Another one. Another. Tenno raised an eyebrow. Asher placed a sealed envelope on the desk. Expensive paper, wax seal with a noble house crest. Tenil vaguely recognized House Meridian, if he wasn't mistaken. Old family, rich through southern vineyards. Let me guess.
Tenel said, tone dry. Marriage proposal. 5th this week. 60th in the last 6 months. Asher confirmed, pulling out a small notebook where he kept meticulous records of everything. House Meridian, 18-year-old daughter. Described as charming, educated, and excellent harp player. He paused. They also mention a generous dowry of 10,000 in gold and 3 southern properties. Tenel rubbed his temples, feeling a headache starting. 60th. 60 marriage proposals in 6 months. He looked at Asher. This is absurd. Not from their perspective. Asher sat in the chair across from the desk, crossing his legs. You're young, single lord of an ancient house that has impressively resurged after tragedy. You're an excellent matrimonial prospect. He tilted his head in that characteristic way. And more importantly, you have no heir. Every noble house with a daughter of marriageable age sees opportunity. Opportunity I have no interest in taking. Tenil tossed the envelope aside without opening it. Add it to the file with the other 59. Polite refusal response. Say I'm focused on rebuilding the house before considering marriage. Same response I gave for the other 59, Asher noted. Eventually, they'll stop accepting that excuse, you know? 2 years is reasonable mourning time. Society expects you to start seriously considering marriage. Society can wait as long as it wants. Tenel replied, sharper than intended. Then, softening his tone, sorry, it's just that. I can't, Asher. Marrying would mean bringing someone into House Vorten. Someone who would ask questions, who would notice strange absences, secret meetings, money that shouldn't exist. He gestured vaguely. How would I explain that I disappear several nights a week? That half my business meetings are criminal operations? You don't explain. You lie, Asher said simply. Like you do with your mother. The truth of that hurt more than Tenil wanted to admit. And you think that's sustainable? Lying to a wife, to mother, performing two roles constantly? No, Asher admitted honestly. I think eventually something will break. But, he leaned forward, I also think a political marriage could be useful. Strategic alliance with a powerful house. Additional resources. Increased legitimacy. He paused. And it could be a cold arrangement, not love, just business. Many noble marriages are like that. Tenil studied his right hand, seeing the cold but correct logic. And you? How's your cold marriage going? Asher blinked, then understood the provocation. A small smile touched his lips. Estella isn't cold. Stella is. He searched for words, that social discomfort appearing when discussing emotions, warm, very warm, and sharp. And occasionally terrifying. The smile widened and perfect. For me, at least, I know. Tenil smiled too. Genuinely, you two are good together. And it works because she knows everything. Knows about Fenrir, about who you are, about what we do. There are no lies between you. Exactly, Asher nodded. And that's why your marriage wouldn't work. Because it would have to be built on lies. And lies rot everything eventually. He paused, then added more quietly. Unless you find someone who can know the truth. Someone who would accept both sides of you. A sudden image flashed in Tenil's mind, amber eyes burning with intensity. Brown hair tied in a practical ponytail. Body, all muscle and determination. Raya, he pushed the thought away quickly. Ridiculous? Raya despised nobles, specially despised Lord Tenil Vorten. And she could never, ever know he was the wolf. When she found out Tand, eventually she would. He wasn't naive enough to think he could hide it forever. She would probably try to kill him. There's no one, he said firmly. And there won't be. At least not while Kasimir still breathes. After, maybe. But now, marriage is a distraction I can't afford. Then I'll continue politely refusing proposals. Asher confirmed, making a note. But eventually, you'll have to give some hope. Maybe accept a formal dinner with one of the families. Just to maintain appearances. I hate appearances, Tenil murmured. And yet, they're all that keeps your double life functioning. Asher replied, ironic, isn't it? Tenil snorted, but couldn't argue. Asher was right. He lived on appearances now. Performing the Lord during the day, the wolf at night. Any other exciting correspondence? He asked, changing the subject. Invitation to House Thornwell's ball next week. Invitation to charity auction. 3 commercial proposals that look legitimate. And Asher paused, pulling out another envelope. This one with a different seal, solid black, without crest. Message from Malric. He's identified the next potential target for Fenrir. Small lord named Orvath, who's apparently moving drugs through the docks for Kasimir. The light mood evaporated instantly. Real work, important work. Meeting tonight, Tenil asked. Already scheduled. Midnight at the base. Everyone will be there. Asher put away the notebook. Until then, you have dinner with your mother at 7, and then a smaller social event at 9. Hausbrennen, birthday celebration. Your presence is expected. Of course it is, Tenil sighed. More performance, more survival. Asher corrected, standing up. It's the price we pay for living in 2 worlds. He paused at the door, and Tenil, about the marriage proposals. If you really don't want to consider any, maybe it's time to ask why. What's really holding you back? Because the answer might not just be Kasimir. He left before Tenil could respond, leaving that observation hanging in the air like smoke. And alone in the office, Tenil looked at the pile of marriage proposals, 60 noble families wanting to marry their daughters to him. 60 opportunities for alliance, power, legitimacy. And all he could think about was a mercenary with amber eyes who hated him without knowing who he really was. Idiot. He murmured to himself. You're an idiot. But even knowing that, he couldn't stop the thoughts. And if he's good enough, the raven asked quietly, tapping ash from his pipe. If he really finds one of us, if he manages to track someone back here, then, Raya said, and there was a dangerous smile on her lips. Hand-caressing sword hilt, he discovers that wolves hunt in packs, and packs protect their own. Always. The blade is correct. The wolf struck the cane on the floor once, sound echoing with finality. We are 7. He is 1. And if he comes after any of us, he'll find all of us. He looked at each member, voice carrying the weight of promise. No one gets left behind. No one is sacrificed. Either we survive together, or we fall together. But we won't be hunted like prey. We're predators, and predators don't run. They turn and bite. Murmurs of agreement. The tension from Illyria's warning remained, but there was also renewed determination. One last thing, Hadi spoke, closing the notebook. We need to establish emergency protocol. Someone is tracked, if someone is compromised. We need a way to warn the others without revealing this base's location. Signal Skull suggested. Something anyone can do. Visible, but not obvious. Wolf mark, Raya said immediately. Wolf paw print drawn in red ink at a specific location. Say the fountain in the central square. If any of us are in danger, leave the mark. Others check daily. Simple, effective. The wolf approved, adopted, and we add code. 1 paw print means general danger. 2 paw prints means member compromised. 3 paw prints means base discovered, immediate evacuation. More agreements. Hadi was noting everything meticulously. Then it's decided, the wolf said, voice final. Horvath tomorrow. Emergency protocol active from now on. And everyone eyes and ears open. If this hunter exists, we'll find him first. He paused. Meeting adjourned. Rest tomorrow begins a new phase. Members began to disperse. Raya was first to leave, followed by Malric, who was already murmuring to himself about where to start looking for the mysterious hunter. Illyria remained seated for a moment, eyes distant, seeing things no one else saw. When only the core remained, the wolf, Hadi, Skull, and the raven, the atmosphere subtly changed. The wolf finally pulled the hat up, revealing his face. Tenil Vorten, not the mask, not the symbol, just the man. Do you think she's right? Tenil asked, voice returning to normal. About the hunter. Illyria has never been wrong so far. Estella replied, standing and stretching tense muscles. And I don't like this. We've always been the hunters. Being hunted, that changes everything. Maybe it's good. Asher observed, putting away the notebook. It keeps us alert. Complacency kills more than swords. Pragmatic philosophy. Cornelius commented, Kasimir's agents. The hunter Illyria had foreseen, or just common criminals seeing a solitary noble as easy target. Small but lethal if used correctly. Cornelius had taught him very well. 1,000 repetitions until the body reacted without conscious thought. He turned the corner, deliberately darker street. Fewer lanterns, more shadows. If they were going to attack, it would be here. Better to control when and where than be caught by surprise in a less favorable location. 5 steps, 10, 15, 20. Then, explosive movement. Figure jumping from rooftop, landing behind him with muffled sound of boots on wet stone. Another emerging from the alley ahead, blocking the way. Tenel turned slowly, assessing. They moved like they had training. Positioning was good. They left no obvious gaps, maintained safe distance. They weren't street amateurs. There was subtle hesitation in the one on the left. The one in front was too close. And the one behind didn't keep his guard high enough. Wallet now. The one who'd landed behind him demanded, voice hoarse, trying to sound threatening. Tenel turned completely to face him, evaluating. Nervous movements, grip on knife a bit loose. Eyes blinking too much. Scared. Trying to seem confident, but scared. "Just thieves?" Tenil asked, voice calm, almost curious. "Or do you work for someone specific?" "None of your business, Lord." The one in front spat the word like an insult. Last chance. Wallet and rings, or Tenil moved. Not like a scared noble, not with hesitation or panic. Like a predator who had identified weaknesses and decided to exploit them. The knife came out of the sheath in fluid movement, one of the first Cornelius had perfected in him. Arm cutting through descending arc, blade meeting the leader's wrist behind him. Not a deep cut, but precise. "Tendons," he screamed. Weapon falling to the ground with a metallic clink. Tenil was already spinning, using momentum. Sidekick hitting the knee of the attacker and front sound of something breaking. Sharp scream of pain, man collapsing. The third was faster, blade cutting air where Tenil's throat had been a second before. But Tenil blocked with forearm pain exploding where blade scraped light armor sewn under coat sleeve. Asher's gift, who had insisted and counter-attacked with punch to the attacker's throat. The man choked, staggered back, hands going to throat, knife falling forgotten. 10 seconds, 3 attackers neutralized. None dead, but all incapacitated. Tenil grabbed the leader by the collar, dragging him to the nearest wall, pressing him against cold, wet stone. His knife still clean, just a bit of blood from the wrist, cut pressed lightly against the man's throat. "Last chance is now mine," Tenil said, voice low but carrying death. "Who sent you?" "Kasimir. Someone else." "Answer fast, or I cut more than wrist." We. The man choked, blood dripping from cut wrist, face pale with pain and terror. "Nobody sent us, I swear." We just saw Lord alone. Thought, easy. Tenil studied his eyes. Pupils dilated from fear. Cold sweat. Genuine trembling. There was no lie there. It's just absolute terror of having chosen the wrong target. They were just thieves. Stupid thieves who tried to rob the wrong person. Not Kasimir's agents. Not the prophetic hunter. Just bad luck and terrible timing. Tenil felt adrenaline beginning to dissipate, leaving something colder in its place. Calculation, strategic decision. "You have a choice," he said, releasing the man slightly but keeping knife visible. "Run now, away from this city. Because if I see any of you again, anywhere, there will be no conversation, no warning. Just death. Understood? Why, yes. Yes, we'll go. We thank you. Thank you for not. Disappear." Tenil cut in, stepping back. They ran or tried to, considering injuries. Stumbling, groaning, but moving as fast as they could. And in seconds, they disappeared into the wet darkness, leaving only bloodstains on wet stones. Tenil stood alone in the street, adrenaline still burning gently, heart beating faster than it should. He looked at his own hand, the one holding the knife, now trembling slightly. Not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from something darker. Anticipation, excitement of violence applied with precision. 2 years ago, he would have frozen in that attack, would have been robbed, possibly killed, unable to react, unable to defend himself. But now his body had reacted without conscious thought. Identified threats, calculated responses, executed with brutal efficiency. As Cornelius had taught, as training had drilled into muscles and nerves. He had become a weapon. And part of him, small but growing part, that scared more than any external enemy, liked it. Liked the certainty of violence. Liked the power to decide who lived and who died. Beware the abyss, boy. Cornelius's voice echoed in memory. When you fight monsters, there's always risk of becoming one. Maybe Tenil was already on that path. Maybe the line between justice and revenge, between protection and cruelty, was already so blurred he could no longer see it. "What the hell are you doing wandering alone?" Female voice, sharp and irritated, cut through dark thoughts. Tenil spun automatically. Body still in combat mode, knife rising. Rhea Pharaohs. Dark leather armor, 2 short swords and crossed sheaths on her back. Brown hair tied in practical ponytail. Amber eyes fixed on him with mixture of irritation and concern. "The blade," Tenil said, forcing the wolf's altered voice, hoping residual adrenaline wouldn't make it waver. He quickly sheathed the knife. "Didn't expect to find you here." "I was returning from the base." She approached, eyes scanning the scene, blood stains, obvious signs of struggle. "Saw you leaving alone like an idiot. Followed to make sure you didn't get killed." She gestured to the blood stains. "Apparently, I didn't need to worry. I know how to defend myself." Clearly, she stopped a few meters away, studying him with those intense eyes that seemed to see through masks. But it's still stupid. They'd been Kasimir's agents instead of amateur thieves, you'd be dead now. 3 against 1. No matter how good you are, there's always risk. I took a calculated risk. "Idiotic risk," she corrected, voice becoming sharper. "You're our leader. We need you alive. The wolf can't die in a dark street stabbed by common thieves. That would be disappointing." There was something in her tone, not sarcasm, but genuine concern hidden under irritation. And something in Tenil warmed at that. Knowing she cared, even without knowing who he really was. That the blade Rhea Pharaohs, who despised nobles, who had spat on the ground when Lord Tenil Vorten passed by her months ago, cared about the wolf. "You're right," he admitted, because denying would be stupid, and she'd see through it. "It was careless. Won't happen again." "Better not." She turned to leave, then paused, looking over her shoulder. "And wolf, clean that arm. You're bleeding through your clothes. If someone sees," Tenil looked down. She was right. The block he'd made, that cut that had scraped the armor, had cut through it and the skin underneath. Blood was slowly dripping down his fingers, staining the coat sleeve. It wasn't a serious wound, but it was visible. And visibility was the enemy of secrets. "Thank you," he said, tearing a strip of fabric from inside his coat and beginning to wrap his arm. Rhea watched for a moment, then, surprisingly, returned. Without a word, she pulled bandage from pouch on her belt. Every good fighter carried basic medical supplies, gestured. "Let me. You're doing it wrong. It'll come loose in 5 minutes." Tenil hesitated, then extended his arm. She worked efficiently, skilled fingers cleaning blood, applying pressure to the cut, wrapping bandage firmly. Her movements were practical, without unnecessary gentleness, but also without brutality. Warriors care for warrior. nothing more. Why are you doing this? Tenel asked quietly, genuinely curious. Raya didn't look up, focused on tying the bandage. Because you gave us purpose. Gave me purpose. She finally met his eyes, or what she could see under the hat's shadow. Before Fenrir, I was just a mercenary fighting for coins, surviving, hating the system that crushed people like me but powerless to change it. She finished the knot, stepping back. You changed that. Gave us a way to fight that matters. To make a real difference. She paused. So yes, I'll make sure you survive. Because if you die, all this dies with you. It wouldn't die, Tenel said. Hadi would take over. Or Skull. The pact continues. Maybe, Raya agreed. But it wouldn't be the same. You have something? I don't know what it is, but when you speak, when you give orders, there's certainty, conviction, like you really believe we can win. And that, she gestured vaguely, as if searching for words. That makes others believe too. Silence fell between them. Rain had started again, light and cold, creating curtain of drops reflecting lantern light. You hate nobles, Tenel said suddenly, not as a question, but as a statement. He needed to know. Needed to hear it again. Raya snorted. Bitter sound. Hate. Yes, absolutely. Her eyes became distant, remembering something. Nobles like Lord Vorten, that spoiled brat I see occasionally at events when I do guard work. He walks like the world owes him something just for existing. Like people like me are less invisible except when they need something. She spat on the ground. Gesture of pure contempt. I spat in front of him once. Months ago, he passed through the docks with his brother, looking at workers like we were animals in a zoo. And I spat. Because men like him don't deserve respect they haven't earned. Each word was a knife in something soft inside Tenel, because she was right. He had been exactly that, spoiled, arrogant, blind to suffering around him because he'd never truly suffered. And she had seen him, judged him, and found him completely wanting. And the wolf, he forced himself to ask. How do you know he's not a noble wearing a mask? Raya looked at him, really looked, and there was something in her eye-sharp perception that made Tenel wonder how much she really saw. Because a noble wouldn't know how to fight like that. She gestured to the bloodstains. Not with real efficiency. Nobles play with swords in perfumed halls. You fight like someone who had to learn or die. Like someone who knows what hunger looks like, what desperation feels like. She crossed her arms. Besides, a noble wouldn't build an organization to protect the weak, would build it to gain power. Subtle difference, but real. I know how to recognize it. Relief and guilt mixed in equal parts. She didn't suspect. But also, she had standards. Expectations about who the wolf was. And if she discovered the truth, good Tenel said, voice a bit hoarse. Because I'm not a noble, I never will be. Lie, truth, both simultaneously. He didn't know anymore. Now go home before someone sees you all bloody. Raya ordered, turning definitively this time. And next time you leave the base alone, tell someone. I'd rather not explain to Skull and Hadi how I let our leader die in a stupid street. She disappeared into shadows and rain, leaving Tenel alone again. But this time, there was a different warmth in his chest. Not just from her concern, but from the confirmation. She respected the wolf because she thought he was something he wasn't. And she despised Lord Vorten because she'd seen exactly what he had been. Impossible situation, story with no possible happy ending. And yet, as he walked back to the mansion, hand bandaged by her, rain washing blood from the streets, Tenel couldn't stop thinking about amber eyes burning with conviction. About sharp but worried voice, about the warrior who had seen the worst in him and the best in him without knowing they were the same person. You're a complete idiot, Tenil Vorten, he murmured to himself, but there was a small, involuntary smile touching his lips. Complete idiot, in love with a woman who hates you. But even knowing the impossibility, even understanding that revelation would destroy everything, he couldn't make the feeling disappear. And as he entered through the mansion's side door, hiding the bandaged arm under his coat, returning to the performance of obedient and responsible Lord Vorten, Tenil wondered how long he could keep all the masks in place. And what would happen when, inevitably, they began to crack.
Lord Horvath's mansion was modest by noble standards, 2 stories. A small but well-maintained garden, low walls that served more for aesthetics than actual defense, appropriate for a lesser noble whose wealth came from sources he couldn't openly display. Dirty money bought luxuries, but couldn't buy ostentation without raising questions. The wolf and Hottie observed from an adjacent rooftop to shadows melded with the darkness of the moonless night. Both dressed completely in black, the wolf in his suit, long overcoat, wide-brimmed hat and scarf covering his face, cane with silver wolf head firmly in hand. Hottie in more practical operational clothing, dark vest, thin gloves, those round glasses reflecting the faint light from street lanterns. 2 guards at the main entrance, Hottie whispered, heterochromatic eyes scanning the grounds methodically. 1 more doing rounds in the garden. Predictable pattern, 12 minutes per cycle. And there's a light on in the 2nd floor study, east window. Our target is awake. Family, the wolf asked, voice already altered to a deep, hoarse tone. Wife and son are in the opposite wing. Hottie consulted a small notebook where he'd drawn the mansion's layout based on information Malric had collected. Their bedroom is on the west side, far from the study. If we're quiet, they won't even know we were here. Good, the wolf nodded. I don't want to frighten them. Only him. The fear needs to be surgical, targeted. Personal. The study window has a simple lock, Hottie pointed eye, can force it in less than 30 seconds. We go in, present our proposal, leave clean. Nothing is clean when it comes to blackmailing nobles. The wolf observed, but there was something in his tone, not regret, but recognition. They were crossing a line. Again, as they'd been doing for 2 years. And each time, the line became easier to cross. Are you ready? Hottie asked, and there was genuine concern beneath the professional efficiency. This is different from Crane. There's no blood here, just breaking a man psychologically, making him so terrified he'd rather betray Kasimir than risk our retaliation. I know. The wolf replied, and yes, I'm ready. Horvath chose to work with Kasimir, chose to poison the streets with drugs that destroy families. He's not a victim, he's an accomplice. And accomplices pay a price. Hottie studied him for a moment, those strange eyes seeing through masks, reading micro-expressions, even with a covered face. Finally, he nodded. Then, let's go. The guard is on the opposite side now. Window of opportunity. 6 minutes. They moved like ghosts across the rooftops, jumping the gap between buildings, landing silently on the edge of Horvath's mansion. The wolf went first, descending the wall using rope that Hottie had secured to a chimney, boots finding small protrusions in the stone.
Hottie followed him, more agile despite being less physically trained, compensating with sharp, spatial intelligence that allowed him to calculate each movement perfectly. They reached the study window. The wolf held onto the ledge while Hadi worked on the lock's small metal tools. Precise movements. Click, click. Final click. 23 seconds. The window opened silently. Hadi had oiled the hinges the night before during reconnaissance. They entered, closing behind them, remaining completely still for a moment, ears alert. Sounds of the mansion, distant footsteps of a servant on the ground floor, wind beating against window panes, and the heavy breathing of a man in the adjacent room, the study proper, separated only by a half-open door. The wolf gestured. Hadi nodded. They positioned themselves, the wolf facing the door, cane in hand, an imposing figure, even in the darkness. Hadi at his side, ready to intercept any escape attempt. Tap, the sound echoing through the silence like a gunshot. The breathing in the adjacent room stopped abruptly. Sound of a chair scraping. Hurried footsteps. And then the door opened completely, revealing Lord Horvath. 41 years old, blonde hair beginning to thin on top. Round and flushed face of one who drank well and ate better. He wore a silk robe over sleepwear, expensive slippers on his feet. In his hand, a pen. He'd been working on something, probably accounting for his illegal operations. He froze upon seeing the two shadowy figures in his private study. Who? How did you? Guards, Aki shouted, turning to run. Hadi was faster, crossing the distance in 3 long strides, hand covering Horvath's mouth before a second shout could escape. Other arm wrapping around his neck in a controlled choke knot, enough to kill, just to immobilize. Silence, the wolf said, voice cutting through the panic like a blade. Or your 12-year-old son wakes up and sees something he shouldn't. Your son Aldrich, isn't it? Beautiful name. Would be a shame to traumatize him. Horvath stopped struggling instantly. Eyes wide, sweat already beginning to flow. Hati released him slowly, backing away but maintaining position between Horvath and any exit. Good. The wolf walked closer, cane tapping rhythmically. Tap, tap, tap. We're going to have a civilized conversation, Lord Horvath. Just 3 men discussing business. No shouting. No violence. Unless, of course, you force us to. Understood? Horvath nodded frantically, voice coming out trembling. What? What do you want? Money. Money. Plenty. We don't want your money, the wolf interrupted. We want your operation and your cooperation. Sit down. Horvath sat in his own chair behind the desk, but there was no command there now. He was pale, hands shaking, eyes jumping between the wolf and Hadi like a trapped animal looking for an escape that did unexist. The wolf remained standing, positioned so that the faint candlelight cast his enormous shadow over Horvath. Simple technique, but effective, making himself appear larger, more threatening. Basic intimidation psychology. Hadi had moved behind Horvath, hands casually in pockets, but his posture made clear that any sudden movement would be intercepted. Let's be direct. The wolf began, placing something on the desk, a thick envelope, sealed with black wax. You work for Lord Kasimir. You move dream dust through the docks. 20% of the profits go to him in exchange for protection. Profitable operation. Well organized. He paused, and now ours. Horvath blinked, processing. Yours? I don't understand. Who are you? We are those who burned Davos Crane's complex, the wolf said simply, and saw recognition and terror wash over Horvath's face. Everyone in the underworld knew about Crane now. And now we're here for you. Horvath swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. I can't just hand over my operation. Kasimir would kill me. He has protections. He has men everywhere. You have no idea who you're dealing with. We know exactly who we're dealing with. Hadi spoke for the first time, voice soft but carrying something disturbing. Lord Kasimir Devereaux, 52 years old. Mansion in the noblest district. 3 secret mistresses, to bastard children he never acknowledged. Estimated fortune of $500,000 in gold, half of it from illegal sources. He tilted his head. Want more details? The sweat on Horvath increased. How do you? This is information. We know many things. The wolf interrupted, including things about you. For example, he pushed the envelope closer. Open this. Horvath hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, broke the seal and took out the contents. Documents, photographs, letters. His face lost all remaining color as he began to leaf through them. The images showed him with a young woman, not his wife. Lord Brennan's daughter. 16 years old. A minor. The letters were correspondence between them. Secret meetings, promises, undeniable evidence of an illegal and deeply compromising relationship. No, Horvath whispered. How did you get? Irrelevant, the wolf said. What matters is that we have them, and we're willing to use them if necessary. But we'd prefer not to. He leaned closer. So here's the proposal. You voluntarily hand over your dream dust operation to us. Give us access to all contacts, routes, records, and in return, this evidence disappears. No one will know. Your family remains intact. Your reputation preserved. And if I refuse, Horvath tried, voice still trembling but with a spark of defiance. If I simply say no, Kasimir protects me. He wouldn't let you. The wolf began to laugh, not a laugh of humor. It was a cold sound, without warmth, that made even Hadi shiver slightly. The sound of a predator encountering particularly foolish prey. The laughter stopped abruptly, and the wolf leaned until he was inches from Horvath's face. Voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You think this is a bluff? Each word came out with surgical precision, without emotion, just fact. You really believe we came here, invaded your home, gathered all this evidence, just to make empty threats? Hadi moved subtly behind Horvath, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder, an apparently casual touch, but carrying a clear message. You are surrounded. You are trapped. You are in our control. Let me clarify something for you, Lord Horvath. The wolf continued. Voice still that emotionless whisper that was somehow more terrifying than screams. We don't bluff. We give warnings. And this, he tapped a finger on the envelope, is your only warning. He straightened up, beginning to walk around the desk, forcing Horvath to turn his head to follow him, keeping him disoriented. You have 1 day, 24 hours, to decide. And here's what happens if you choose wrong. He stopped, cane tapping the floor. First, these images and letters go to Lord Brennan, the girl's father, a man known for his violent temper. He'll challenge you to a duel. And considering you've never held a sword in real combat, you'll die. Horvath opened his mouth to protest, but the wolf raised his hand, silencing him. Second, copies go to all the capital's newspapers. Your reputation destroyed. Your wife divorcing you publicly. Your family, an old and respected family, permanently stained. Third, Hadi added, voice still soft but carrying weight. We add other crimes to the evidence. Not just the illicit affair, but tax fraud, treason against the crown, conspiracy, some real, others fabricated so perfectly that no one will question their authenticity. He paused. And when the royal investigation begins, when inquisitors comb through your operations, they'll find everything, including the dream dust. And fourth, the wolf said, returning to stand directly in front of Horvath, leaning in again, voice dropping even lower. Your family loses its noble title. Properties confiscated. And your son, Aldrich, 12 years old, will be marked for the rest of his life as a criminal's son. Rejected by society, despised, every opportunity denied, every door closed. He'll carry your shame until he dies. The calculated cruelty of choosing an innocent child as leverage was effective precisely because it was monstrous. Horvath was crying now, silently, tears streaming down. And all of this, the wolf continued implacably. If you refuse, or if you tell anyone about this meeting, Kasimir guards, your wife, anyone, because we'll be watching, always watching. And the moment we detect betrayal, he snapped his fingers, the sound sharp in the quiet. Everything I described happens, automatically, without additional warning. He backed away, giving Horvath space to breathe for the weight of everything to settle. But, and here his voice softened marginally, not with kindness, but with pragmatism, if you cooperate. If you hand over the operation voluntarily, if you give us everything we ask for, then all this evidence disappears. Burned, destroyed, as if it never existed. You continue your life. Your family remains intact. Your son grows up not knowing he was so close to having his future destroyed. He struck the cane one final time. One day, Horvath, think carefully, because there won't be a second chance. There won't be negotiation, just yes or no. And the consequences of your choice, absolute silence. Horvath was destroyed, face and hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A man psychologically broken in less than 15 minutes. How? He finally managed to speak, voice hoarse. How do I hand it over? How do I make contact? Tomorrow night, midnight. Hadi responded. There's an abandoned warehouse on Anchor Street, number 23. You go alone. Bring all records, contacts, vault passwords, everything, and hand it over. No tricks, no guards. No informing Kasimir. And if I do this, you'll really destroy the evidence. The wolf leaned in one last time, voice returning to that deadly whisper. We don't lie, Horvath. We don't make empty promises. When we say something will happen, it happens. For good or ill, your choice determines which. He paused. But know this, men who betray our agreements disappear completely and discover there are things worse than death or social ruin. There's oblivion. Being erased so completely that it's as if you never existed. He turned to leave, Hadi following him. 24 hours. The wolf said from the window. Choose wisely. And then they disappeared into the night, leaving Horvath alone in his study. Surrounded by evidence of his own destruction, facing an impossible choice. Betray Kasimir and possibly die. Or betray his family and definitely destroy them. There was no good option, only degrees of ruin. And that was exactly what the wolf intended. The warehouse was empty, except for 3 figures. The wolf and Hadi waited in the center of the space, lanterns positioned strategically to illuminate a specific area while keeping themselves in shadows. And Lord Horvath arriving exactly at midnight, dragging a heavy leather suitcase. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in one day. Deep circles under his eyes, hands still trembling, posture bent like a man carrying an impossible weight. But he was alone, as instructed. I brought everything. His voice was hoarse, as if he'd spent the last 24 hours crying or screaming or both. Records, contacts, passwords, everything you asked for. He placed the suitcase on the floor, opened it. It was full of organized documents, account books, keys, small bags of coins. Hadi approached, kneeling to examine the contents with that characteristic meticulous efficiency. He leafed through documents, checked names, tested keys. 3 minutes of tense silence while he worked. Finally, he looked up, nodding to the wolf. Complete. Everything is here. Supply routes, distributor lists, stock locations, even codes for the vaults in the main warehouse. There was genuine approval in his voice. You were thorough. I did what you ordered, Horvath said, voice breaking. Now, will you destroy the evidence, as you promised? The wolf walked closer, stopping 3 meters away. He pulled an envelope from the inner pocket of his overcoat, the same one he'd shown the night before. Without a word, he threw it to Horvath. Horvath caught it with trembling hands, opened it, checked the contents. All the images, all the letters. Everything was there. Then the wolf lit a match, a small but clear flame in the darkness. "Burn it," he ordered. "Yourself." So you know they really disappeared. Horvath didn't hesitate. He held the envelope over the flame of a nearby lantern, watching paper and photographs catch fire, turn to ash, fall to the floor like black snow. When the last piece was consumed, he collapsed to his knees, sobbing with relief and despair mixed together. What do I tell Kasimir when he finds out? He'll kill me. No, the wolf replied, because you're going to disappear before that. Tonight, take your family. Tell them there's an urgent business opportunity in another city, and go. Fast, far away. Change your name if necessary. Start a new life where Kasimir can't reach. But my house, my title, their ashes waiting to burn. The wolf said without mercy. Kasimir will discover the loss of the operation in days, perhaps hours. And when he does, he'll send people to find you. People much worse than us. People who don't offer choices. Just death. He paused. So run while you still can, and if I stay. If I try to explain, Hadi stood up, brushing off his hands. Then you die. Kasimir doesn't accept failure, doesn't forgive weakness, and losing an entire operation because of blackmail. That's weakness he won't tolerate. His heterochromatic eyes gleamed. But if you disappear, if you become a ghost, there's a chance. Small, but real. Kasimir has bigger enemies now. Us. He'll focus on hunting us, not pursuing a cowardly noble who fled. You're saving me, Horvath asked, confusion mixing with despair. No, the wolf corrected. We're giving you the tool you need to save yourself. What you do with it is your choice. But choose quickly, because every minute you remain in this city, your chances of survival decrease. He turned, signaling for Hadi to take the suitcase. One last thing, Horvath. The wolf paused without looking back. The dream dust you moved. It destroyed families, created addicts, killed people. Not directly, perhaps. But your hands are dirty. Now he looked over his shoulder. So when you flee, when you start a new life, remember that. And choose differently. Be better. Or eventually, other wolves will come. And next time, there won't be a choice. Just justice. Horvath nodded frantically, still on his knees, still crying. I will, I promise. I'll be better. Just please. Don't come back. But the wolf and Hadi had already disappeared into the shadows, taking the suitcase full of secrets from an entire operation. Outside, a few blocks ahead, Tenil finally removed his hat and scarf, allowing himself to breathe normally. Asher did the same, putting away his glasses. Do you think he'll run? Kier asked. Yes. Tenil replied. Because cowards always run when they have the chance. It's what they do best. He looked at the suitcase, and we have what we needed. Complete operation. No blood spilled. No violence. Just calculated psychological destruction. Do you feel bad about it? Asher asked. And there was genuine curiosity, not judgment. Tenil considered honestly. I should. I used an innocent child as leverage. I threatened to destroy an entire family. I broke a man completely. He paused. But I don't feel bad, because Horvath chose to work with Kasimir, chose to poison the streets, and choices have consequences. He looked at Asher. Does that make me a monster? It makes you pragmatic, Asher replied, and necessary. The world isn't saved by saints who refuse to dirty their hands. It's saved by those willing to do what needs to be done, even when it costs a piece of their soul. He placed a hand on Tenil's shoulder. Just don't forget why you're doing this, why we started this, to protect the weak, to destroy a rotten system, not for power, not for pleasure, for justice. I won't forget, Tenil promised. But even as he said it, part of him wondered how many pieces of his soul he could lose before nothing remained but the mask. "Let's go," Asher said, beginning to walk. "We have an operation to take over." And Raya is waiting to command the occupation of the warehouse. She was too excited about the idea of taking something from Kasimir. Despite the wait, Tenil smiled slightly. "She always gets like that when there's a chance to hurt Kasimir, just like you," Asher observed. "You two have more in common than anyone realizes." And as they walked through dark streets toward the next phase of the operation, Tenil allowed himself to think about it. He and Raya, both driven by hatred of injustice, both willing to cross lines for causes they believed in, both more comfortable with violence than they should be. Compatibility founded on shared darkness, and still impossible because she could never know who he really was. "You're thinking about her again?" Asher said. Not as a question. "Shut up," Tenil replied. But there was no real heat. Just saying, you have 60 marriage proposals from women who could actually know both sides of you. Noble women who would understand a double life because they live their own performances. Asher adjusted the suitcase. "Ah, and you're obsessed with the one woman who literally hates you." "She doesn't hate me," Tenil corrected. "She hates Lord Vorten. She respects the wolf, who are the same person. Exactly the problem." Asher laughed, a soft and genuinely amused sound. "You're too complicated for your own good, you know." "I figured that out recently," Tenil admitted. But too late to change now. They continued toward Horvath's warehouse, where the rest of the pack awaited, where they would assume complete control of Kasimir's dream dust operation, where they would strike another blow to the empire of the man who had killed his family. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was bitter, necessary, endless. But it was all Tenil had now. So he would continue, step by step, operation by operation, until Kasimir fell, or until Tenil himself was completely lost in the shadows he inhabited, whichever came first. And so, another chapter of our saga comes to an end, but the tapestry of time still holds many plots to be revealed. To not miss the unfolding of upcoming events and continue this journey with us, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Leave your like so more listeners discover our tales and share this story with those who also yearn for new legends. What was your favorite moment from this narrative? Leave your comment below and get ready because the next chapter will soon echo here. See you next time, dear listener.